Syria's future hinges on uncertainty after the abrupt fall of President Bashar Al Assad. Once considered unassailable, Assad regime collapsed under the pressure of a rapid offensive by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or HTS and its allied factions. Our next report decodes the fall of the 53-year-old regime and why the Assad government was forced to surrender to the rebels. Take a look.
The Syrian revolution has gained its final victory. Bashar al-Assad's 53-year-old rule over Syria has finally collapsed. What once seemed like an unshakable regime has crumbled within a matter of 11 days. While many are shocked over the fall of the Assad regime, others are rejoicing the victory.
اللي صار بسوريا جميل. يعني ما كنا متوقعين ان تصير هيك يعني. والله. ولا بحياتنا. يعني كان علينا عسكريه طاشين العسكريه. وهذا اللي مفرحنا. وهذا اللي مفرحنا.
هلا شو الوضع جديد ما بنعرف، شو الترتيب الجديد ما بعرف. قبل كان يعني على اضراط وهلا على احسن ان شاء الله. احسن بكثير مو شوي. احسن بكثير بشوي ما بنعرف، لسه نشوف شو الوضع شو الترتيب.
The story of Assad's downfall is not one of the sudden violence or a single battle, but rather the culmination of years of unrest and international pressure. It started in 2011 when peaceful protest against the Assad regime met with brutal repression. What followed was a bloody civil war that lasted over a decade and left the country in ruins. The regime had lost control of many parts of Syria over the years, but had managed to hold on to Damascus, the seat of its power. Fast forward to November 27th, a coalition of opposition forces launched a powerful offensive under the banner of Operation Deterrence of Aggression. Led by HTS and supported by Turkish-backed factions, the opposition quickly gained ground, sweeping through key cities including Aleppo, Homs and Hama. And by the end of the week, Damascus was in the hands of opposition forces. As the opposition forces surged into the capital, the Syrian military weakened by years of fighting and diminished morale. Soldiers abandoned military bases, surrendered weapons, and fled front lines. With the regime unable to hold back the opposition, Assad fled the country, ordering peaceful transfer of power. The Syrian Prime Minister Ahmed Al-Shara has laid down his guns.
لأي قيادة يختارها الشعب السوري ونحن مستعدون للتعاون معها بحيث نقدم لهم كل التسهيلات الممكنة وبحيث يتم نقل الملفات الحكومية المختلفة بشكل سلس.
The fall of Assad's rule is not only a military collapse but also an economic one. Syria's economy had been in shambles for years. It has been reliant on illicit trade, including the controversial drug Captagon. The lack of resources and the compounded failures of allies like Russia and Iran, who were too embroiled in their conflicts, rendered Assad's government powerless. Opposition forces opened the infamous Sednaya prison, known for its horrific human rights abuses under Assad's regime. Thousands of political prisoners held for challenging the regime were released. While opposition forces have taken control of key regions, there are still questions about the future of Syria. Will the revolution be able to build the country after years of destruction? Will other factions rise to power, or will Syria fall into further chaos? For now, Syrians are celebrating the end of the tyrannical rule, but the path ahead remains uncertain. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Let's now take a look at some of the expert reactions on what is unfolding in Syria.
The umbrella that all of the anti-Assad forces were under now raises the question, what will happen in the future? How is there will be an interfighting between these groups? We saw this before in Idlib, after they controlled the city. There were intra-fighting between rebel groups led by HTS and other groups in the city. Let's hope that maybe Syria will have a different scenario this time.
So what's happening now is that the Assad regime, even though has crushed this country, has made the right choice in the last day, in the last hours. If the Assad regime would have fought for the capital of Damascus, of Syria, and would have destroyed the capital in this fighting, we would have seen another Syria. But by choosing to leave the country, or fleeing and opening the way for negotiations and a peaceful surrender between the Syrian rebels and the remaining of the Assad regime, now we have a more smooth transition, probably. And the bureaucrats and the technocrats of the Assad regime will probably play a role in this transition period. So by surrendering peacefully, there is now a bigger hope for Syria to end this conflict peacefully and to do not have a spillover, to not have acts of revenge. And especially the Alawite minority in the coastal region of Syria who supported the Assad regime to the last day now have a more secure position with the peaceful surrender. And I can expect that the Syrian rebels will coordinate with the technocrats and bureaucrats of the Assad regime to make this transition as smooth as possible, because they need their capabilities to run a state. Even though the Syrian rebels have shown their capabilities, even though they have the institutions, it's always good to have some technocrats and bureaucrats who knows how things run and who can help in the transition period.
On one hand, positive is that Iran has been very, very weakened as a result of Israel's strikes on Iran and, of course, their proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas down in Gaza. You know, these might be different sides here. You're talking about Shia, you're talking about Sunni, all these different parties. But at the end of the day, Iran is the head of the octopus, and that still remains our greatest threat. But as you said, we do have to pay attention to this new reality. We do have to take into consideration the fact that some of these Sunni-led groups in Syria perhaps will turn their attention towards us. We know that they're enemies of Iran, but they are not a friend of the state of Israel. You can make the argument that certain Kurdish groups who are Western-backed, backed by the United States, definitely have common interests with the state of Israel. But if you're talking about the HTS, if you're talking about the rebels there supported by the Turkish regime, they certainly don't have the interests of the state of Israel or the Western world on their minds. So we have to pay attention very, very carefully to the spiraling situation there in Syria.
Lavrov has characterized any opposition to Bashar al-Assad as basically ISIS and al-Qaeda. So I don't think we need pay any mind to him. But the reports are that Russia, I've seen satellite photographs showing the Russian base at Tartus, the naval base, is empty. They ordered their ships to put to sea and have basically vacated their only naval base in the Mediterranean. We've also had reports that Iran has ordered its Revolutionary Guard officers who command the basic ethnic militias that have been raised in Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan to actually be the cannon fodder for the war on behalf of Assad. They've ordered their officers to leave the country. They just don't want to lose any more of them. So I think they've kind of recognized that Syria as a functioning partner of them or a proxy of them. That just doesn't exist anymore.